It is 8:30. I'll go ahead and call today's meeting of the Clay County Board of Commissioners to order. Looking for an approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion by Bear, second by Ebinger to approve the agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Employee recognitions. I ran up the stairs, and that wasn't smart. I'm trying to catch my breath. I'm sorry. You always think you're in more shape until you run up the stairs. Okay, today we are excited to have 3 people that we're acknowledging. The first person today will be Kristen Dupree from Social Services. We have Holly here. Kristen, we are so excited to acknowledge your 20 years of service to Clay County and our citizens. We're so grateful to have you as part of the team. Congratulations. Thank you. Yep.
All right, so just a few words on Kristen. So she started with Clay County in our Child Protection Unit as an ongoing child protection case manager. She was in that role for 7 years and then moved over to our home and community-based unit and has been a disability case manager since that time. Kristen's caseload is a bit unique in our unit. She's the only case manager that works with children birth to 12 years old. So a lot of times she's working with families who are new to disability services and maybe feeling overwhelmed with where do I go, what do I do to help connect my son or daughter to services. So she does an excellent job connecting with families. I can think of many situations over the years where she's provided compassion, support, or just that listening ear to a parent who just does not know, what do I do? How do I help my child? So in addition to that, Kristen has a great relationship with our community stakeholders, particularly our schools. She works really closely with our early intervention services in elementary schools in collaborating with services for kiddos on our caseload. So thank you, Kristen, and congratulations on 20 years with Clay County. Thank you.
Our next individual today is from Public Health, Valerie Nesset. Okay, wonderful. Well, can you acknowledge the fact that Valerie has been with Clay County for 20 years, and we're just so excited to have had this time with her. She's such a valuable asset to the team.
Yeah, she's an admin support person, and so she's worked in all program areas, and particularly her claim to fame is she goes out to every vaccine clinic. We do influenza vaccine clinics around the county, and she is so excited to go out there and work with people that want vaccines, and she's really helpful to the nurses. She's loading up their stuff and hauling the supplies, so Val is a great asset, so we appreciate all she does.
Thank you. And another one from Public Health, Patrick Hollister. We have Rory with today. Patrick, this plaque is given to you today in grateful recognition for your service to Clay County and its citizens over your 15 years. Thank you so much for your work. We really appreciate it.
Well, Patrick came to us back, the Minnesota State Legislature in 2009 approved some funding for a novel approach statewide health improvement program to address some chronic disease and healthy weight issues. And our fearless leader of health promotion at the time, Gina Nolte, assembled a team of which Patrick was part of. We still have 3 from that team that are with us, which is really unheard of in the grant-funded world. Patrick, one of those. He's the only one in the state, I believe, who's a city planner. He's an active living planner. His specialty is helping to design communities to make it easier for people to walk and bike. He's recognized as an expert by MDH. He's spoken at national conferences. He's been recognized by a national group, Smart Growth, for his work. So he's a wealth of knowledge. And Currently, he's working on helping to extend the Heartland Trail with FM MetroCog through Clay County to the Red River. So, Patrick, thanks for all that you do.
Do you want me to take the next couple so you can catch your breath? You want me to take the next couple so you can catch your breath? All right, the next item is the payment of bills and vouchers.
I would move to approve bills and vouchers.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Krabanoff to approve the payment of bills and vouchers, a second from Commissioner Ebinger. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Carried. And then the next item, before Commissioner Campbell takes over, would be the minutes from January 21st, 2025 that were included in the packet.
I'll make a motion to approve with one spelling error on page 10 for Anna Moore. Her last name is spelled wrong. If we correct that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion to offer approval of the minutes with the amendment of the spelling. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carried. Yeah, it is yours.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mojo, we did skip over citizens to be heard.
Okay, I'll handle that. All right, good morning. Do we have any citizens to be heard on items not on the agenda today? Any citizens to be heard? Any online?
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Seeing none, we will move on to item number 2. Request for approval of MnDOT grant agreement resolution 2025-07. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning. So yes, the first item I have is approval of MnDOT agreement for CASA 14 southwest of Glendon. So this is a bridge replacement that was bid later in 2024. And as required by MnDOT for the use of bridge bond funding, we have a grant agreement and supporting resolution. Then the cost impact and funding is laid out in your packet. So we did receive almost $700,000 in bridge bonding for this project.
All right. Questions?
I have one question.
Okay.
Is this construction going to happen this year?
Yep, so the road we'll actually be sending out a news flash later this week. The road will be closing February 20th. So they'll tear the bridge out this winter, pound all the piling this winter, and then depending on spring conditions, continue to go after that.
That's all I had.
All right, thank you. We're looking for a resolution of support for,
I'll offer a motion to approve Resolution 2025-7 for SP 014614001.
thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next item is approval of MnDOT grant agreement with resolution 2025-08.
Yes, so this one and the next item are kind of a partnership project with both the city of Dilworth and the Buffalo Red River Watershed District. So we were able to receive bridge bonding for a bridge replacement in the city of Dilworth on a local street. So the funds come to us, but we're just a sponsor for the city and the Buffalo Red River Watershed District. So there's no cost impact to the county. The bridge bond funds just have to come through us.
I'll offer a motion of support or a motion to approve Resolution 2025-08 for SAP 014597003.
I'll second that.
Two. Second, all right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next item, grant agreement 2025-09.
Yes, so this is the same thing as the previous one, just on a different street in the city of Dilworth. It was a joint project, no cost impact to the county.
I'll make a motion to approve MnDOT agreement 1055977 and resolution 2025-09.
All right, we have a motion.
A second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. All right. Request 2025-10 for small city allotment.
Yes, so this is, the resolution that I'm bringing forward is the one that is passed annually for funding to non-state aid cities for the work done on local city streets and for the city of Moorhead for work done on county roads within the city of Moorhead. Kind of one item to note, I did include the 40th turnback within your packet. This is the last payment, which is payable in 2024. So it'll be on 2024's budget, and like I had mentioned throughout my 2025 budget cycle, I used that funding to seal coat and stripe this year.
I have one question.
Okay.
So does Moorhead take care of the county roads inside the city of Moorhead?
Yes,
Maintain them and?
yep, so they plow all the, like 11th Street, they plow that, for example.
All right, any further questions?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2025-10 for the small city street allotment.
All right, we have a motion
Second?
and a second. Any further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. All right, we will move into our, thanks, Justin. We'll move into our item number 6, request approval to fill a welfare fraud investigator position. Good morning, Quinn.
Morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm here today, firstly, to request to refill the welfare fraud investigator position due to a resignation. The state keeps stealing our people. And what I mean by that is this is a 12-year veteran who we're losing, so a lot of institutional knowledge that we're losing. And again, as bittersweet as it is for him to move on to go to the state, I'm also proud at the same time that his knowledge and expertise is something that the state is interested in. So it's a very bittersweet thing to lose him as well. Obviously, we received his notice of resignation. Currently, there's 2 staff that are doing that job as we speak. Based on current workload trends, we do recommend that 2 staff continue being assigned to this work. We did see a very significant drop in the fraud cases during COVID with all of the, I guess, orders that were around what fraud looked like during COVID. However, as you can see based on the numbers, they had dropped from over 500 prior to COVID to down to 274 in 2022. Since then, we've started to see with those kind of orders being reversed, see that trend go back up. And as of last year, the number has exceeded our pre-COVID numbers up to 638. Good to see that, I guess, we're back on track in terms of the fraud prevention. I included the wage calculator. This isn't a straight dollar for dollar with how the wage calculator works because 1.25 FTE of this position is funded by a state and federal fraud prevention grant. So although the wage calculator projects a cost savings of $22,246, how we claim the salaries to the grant based on the salary of the person and how fast we're able to draw down from the grant, it will ultimately result in an estimated cost savings of $5,044, even though we're going from grade 16 step 12 to very likely grade 16 step 1. So I just wanted to be transparent with the board about that. I guess with that I would yield to any questions.
Prior to COVID, were there 2 positions then too?
Yes, yeah. The numbers were above 500 prior to COVID, and that was definitely need for two positions.
And this would be unlikely to have backfill, right, because of the uniqueness of the job, or?
I will request backfill, however, I'm not anticipating any right now, but I would rather get it approved just in case.
All right.
Mr. Chair. Go ahead.
Commissioner Krabnoff.
Just a little background. I am curious. So, number one, what do you think is the greatest reason for this almost doubling?
I think that the concerns for fraud were present. It's just the orders and the kind of how they redefined what fraud looked like. I don't want to say that they just opened it up, but they really shut off a lot of things that might have been considered fraud during COVID.
Gotcha.
So things that were occurring, just we weren't allowed to look into.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Ebinger.
Yeah, I'd move to approve the vacant welfare fraud investigator position with backfill.
Very good.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right. Quinn, you have another one.
I do, and one more after that. I just
Okay.
to come
Yes,
see you
let's do
guys.
that.
Morning. All right. Now I'm here to speak to the local homeless prevention aid. I'm looking for a motion to approve a contract with CAP-LP to utilize the local homeless prevention aid funds for a total of $303,126. The commissioners remember back on November 5th, you'd approved an issuance of a request for proposal for the distribution of these funds. We went through that. We posted the RFP, received the responder's application. We did have one application that was submitted. What I think is great about this specific application is it wasn't just CAP-LP, it was a partnership of our local providers. So it's CAP-LP, Moorhead Public Schools, and Churches United wrote together for these funds. You can see that kind of what's proposed in the application was funding a full-time advocate to provide outreach, housing navigation and support services to families and youth within CAP-LP, funding for 24/7 shelter advocates at Micah's Mission under Churches United, and also funding for a full-time position at Moorhead Area Public Schools to provide tailored support for Native American families experiencing homelessness. To recap, the local homeless prevention aid was created in 2021 by the state legislature to help local governments ensure no child is homeless within a local jurisdiction by keeping families from losing their housing and helping those experiencing homelessness find housing. We've had a good partnership with CAP-LP with utilizing these funds in the past, and I think their application and partnership with our other providers in the area goes to show that they don't want to do this work alone. Again, we were allocated $303,126 for state fiscal year 25 for these for this year and for this project. It's paid in 2 installments, July 20th and December 26th. I would be looking to sign contracts immediately upon approval. Again, to remind the commission, this is Department of Revenue funds, not DHS funds. The allocations change each year. Last year was a slightly smaller amount, so I was happy to see that the allocation this year was increased. I guess with that, I would yield for any questions.
Is the allocation amount the same we talked about though in the fall?
Yes, the 303,000 is the same amount.
That didn't change. Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kravinoff.
Just a comment. I too, it's being part of this. It's 2 years in a row, I guess. Maybe it happened before, but for sure since I've been here. I really appreciate that we get this collaboration of these groups. So they're talking to each other, kind of knowing what fits best for them within the RFP, rather than having 3 individuals that are competing against each other, where we have to decide. It's so much easier to have that cooperation among each, and obviously we know they do, and it's long-standing. So I just appreciate that and certainly support it.
Commissioner Ebinger.
Yeah, I concur with Commissioner Kravinoff's observations. We have good partners in this, and it's been successful in previous collaborations. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve this grant aid with the partners identified, approve and the selection and subsequent contract with CAP-LP, which includes their partnership with Churches United and Moorhead Public Schools for local homeless prevention aid in the amount of $303,126.
I'll second.
You have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
One
Commissioner Bear.
question. Are you the one that facilitates going after this grant money?
This is set by the legislature.
By the legislature?
Yep.
Do the other school districts, have you ever asked the other school districts to tie in with these that are in the county, other than just Moorhead?
I haven't specifically targeted any one person, but we put it out as an RFP. We put it out on our website, and we get it out to all of our homeless providers.
All right,
Yeah.
just curious.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, Quinn, one more.
Okay, I'm here to do the exact same thing with the statewide affordable housing aid. This was an amount of $68,698. We had one applicant again for this RFP, which was Clay County HRA. Clay County HRA was awarded the funds in state fiscal year 2024 as well. Again, on October 22nd, the board approved the RFP process for the statewide affordable housing aid as well. We reviewed the applications and scored them, again with HRA being the sole applicant. According to their application, they'll use these funds to support operations at Gateway Gardens and Bright Sky Apartments, as well as to assist or provide assistance for recently added housing support clients at Bright Sky Apartments as they took on that role from Churches United. In summary, the statewide affordable housing aid is designed to help counties, tribal governments, and local jurisdictions in greater Minnesota develop and maintain affordable housing, prevent housing loss, and support individuals experiencing homelessness in securing stable housing. Again, I have drafted contracts ready to be signed if approved. Again, this is Department of Revenue funds. It's paid in two installments of July 20th and December 26th, totaling $68,698. Requesting that we approve this motion, but I would yield to any questions.
Any questions? And again, this is the same thing we talked about in the fall, right?
Correct.
Same dollar amount?
Same dollar amount, yep.
And there again, collaboration with Churches United. So I think it's wonderful what they do.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
I would approve, make a motion that we approve the selection and subsequent contract with Clay County HRA for utilization of statewide affordable housing in the amount of $68,698.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Quinn.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have an update from West Central Regional Water District with AE2S. We have with us this morning Stephen Slick with AE2S and our Water District Chairman of the Board, Lucas Spaeth. Good morning. Maybe just to start this off a little bit, Commissioner Bear and I at our last board meeting, we talked about the most recent update that we had at our last meeting in regard to finances, and we'll get into that a little bit in their PowerPoint today. We're not expecting a board to make any decision today on, but I think it's going to be important for us to have that discussion as to where we are and what is needed to keep this thing moving along. So, Lucas, are you going to start off, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, as Commissioner Campbell mentioned, my name is Lucas Spaeth. I'm the board chair for the West Central Regional Water District, your West Central Regional Water District. I'm also the utility superintendent for the city of Hallstead, where we have a distribution of water, wastewater, and electric in my background. With the West Central, of course, as you all may remember, it's 3 county-wide. We're going through a process, through the state process. It's a 116A process to be formally accepted as a public water system. As part of that, the engineering that we've hired AE2S to continue to do is really realizing where the water supply waters are coming from, as much as where the water is needed in your communities and rural. It's up to 30 cities and 40,000 people, and we'll get into how we've grown quite quickly in the last 12 months. Major needs for the project, the water quality concerns. This probably hits your rural residents a little more than what we do in the city side, but the aging infrastructure on city side is large dollar amounts that they're looking for, critical infrastructure, such as in their, it could be water treatment facilities, it could be water towers,
some have other needs in their distribution system as well. Lack of licensed operators. Right now, the city of Halsted, or our Halsted Municipal Utilities, is our utility company. We are contracted with, right now, not Felton, Borup, the small city of Borup and the small city of Pearlie. They are both in Norman County. Previously, we did contract with the city of Georgetown until we cross-trained the Georgetown mayor's wife. She is now their certified operator. I had a call yesterday from Glendon's, their engineer, Altag Engineering, and they're currently looking for a certified operator. And so, I mean, it was more of a question and answer right now, but you could see us in Glendon in the future, potentially short term. As we mentioned, those critical infrastructures, there's super high capital cost. So with the engineers, and we're developing out kind of a master plan, and that's really what has been taking a lot of the time on the engineering side, is recognizing these small cities and their needs, what those end up being. In consideration, like the city of Borup, they put about $3 million into a small water plant and to find wells. Of course, their wells, they needed to added an additional storage reservoir, and these are tanks inside of a shed. But they, once they drilled 3 new wells, and they were only able to supply 35 gallons a minute out of one, and then about 55 gallons a minute out of the other. So they needed to add quite a bit of storage, and then also then they have some pressurized tanks that put pressure into the system. And then the emerging contaminants, they come down from the DNR, but mostly from the Minnesota Department of Health, who oversees water qualities and what they call max contaminant levels. We see a lot of those in the arsenic levels, which would be one of the more particular ones that we see in the rural. And there's some cities that have had to put treatment in for arsenic as well. I believe Hitterdal is looking at a plant of sorts potentially for the arsenic that they see in that area. And then we've seen it a lot through surveys that it's in the rural area. Much more difficult for a private citizen to treat for that arsenic. So I'll let Stephen kind of talk about the mapping and the progress.
Yeah, thank you, Lucas. I'm going to start off by apologizing to Commissioner Mojo, because she's seen some of these slides. I kind of scavenged them from an update we gave to the Basin Commission a couple weeks ago, so this is very timely.
It's good stuff. No.
I like it. So just to kind of reiterate, so the conception of this project came around in 2019, 2020, with the city of Climax kind of looking for their long-term water supply. They'd been looking for 10 years trying to determine if they should build a plant or regionalize with a nearby water district. Through that process, they had connected with East Central Regional Water District in North Dakota and determined that that would be a good long-term fit for the city as they were facing high arsenic issues in a plant that was past its useful life. Throughout that process, East Central Regional Water District really wanted to kind of reach out and understand, if there's going to be a pipe going across the river to Climax, we want to make sure it's big enough to possibly serve, those in the future that may need it. And through that process, outreach and, folks even coming to East Central, they realized, there might be a bigger need here. And in November 2021, you can kind of see that's where we realized that there were some mailers that had gone out that, there might be this Highway 75 corridor and many rural residents in the area that could use a new regional water supply source. Summer 2022, as that project had come to fruition, design was completed, funding was secured through USDA, the pipeline was built to the city of Climax. With that pipeline being built to the city of Climax being funded through USDA funding, the way it works out is USDA is only going to pay for the sizing that that community needs. And at that point, kind of all this information and research was brought to the Polk County Board, and they had paid to upsize that pipeline from an 8-inch to a 12-inch to serve, rural Polk, Norman counties at that time. So initially, as this concept had grown and really kind of taken hold of the region, resolutions to form the district were signed by Norman and Polk counties in fall of 2022. In fall of 2022, $30,000 investment was made by Norman County for the initial studies and actually legal work more so to figure out what needs to be done to form a water district. What are the steps? And that $30,000 investment was eventually incorporated into kind of a later budget. It's hard to believe that's already almost been 2 years ago that I was here in front of many of this board. Time's kind of flying, but spring of 2023, Clay County had as well passed the resolution, and at that time to join the district and form the district. And at that time, within the resolution, that all the counties had signed, and we were kind of looking at this footprint of Polk excluding Crookston, all of Norman, and then really the top tier townships of Clay County. Kind of at that point, and then some of the subsequent presentations that Daniel Marks and I think myself had given to this board and the other board, is kind of what we thought it would take to form this district, look at what's required by statute as a feasibility study. And at that time, a $300,000 budget was set, with proportionate being Polk at $135,000, Clay at $117,000, and Norman at $48,000. And those numbers are derived or based off of board apportionment within that district. So as we had evolved from a steering committee into kind of the full functioning board that was appointed by the court, we had really kind of played around with, if we're going to do this and the counties are going to go forward with this effort, and saying, to go through this process, it's a lot. There's a lot there. There's a lot of study. There's a lot of legal work. And I think, Polk, Norman, and Clay counties realize that we want to extend this opportunity to, everyone within the county boundary, whether it can serve them right now or whether it's 10, 20 years down the road. If we're going to go through the process, go through it one time. And as you can see, in a very short period of time over summer 2023 to today, the district, encompasses all of Polk that is in Marshall and Polk rural water system, all of Norman, and all of Clay, excluding the ETA area by City of Moorhead, and Moorhead Public Services, anticipated service area. And as we'll kind of get into it here, though that this boundary is derived, we've seen some recent developments that may end up having a positive impact to water supply across the county. So what we're really looking at in this long-term study, many of you have seen this, but for those that haven't, is when we had done the feasibility study, the initial step in the court process, we're trying to figure out how do you approach this? How do you tackle this dartboard? I mean, it's a wide area. There's a lot of variables we don't know, and some that we do. So what was proposed and accepted in that first feasibility study was to really look at breaking this district in kind of 5 study zones to use as a starting point. This isn't written in stone. I imagine this changing many times. But what we had kind of looked at is breaking into 5 zones based on known water supply, known project participants and users, elevation, and really, what is our variety of sources that we think is out there and their operational capabilities. And so with that, this proposed improvement in 5 zones is really the basis of what our engineering study / master plan is going to kind of focus on. Really what, being that much of the early on development and part of the process had started in Zone 3, which is that basically original boundary. We really want to focus our first Phase 1 improvements within this court process on that, while kind of looking to master plan the rest of the zones with, our proposed future improvements once we know a little bit more, and maybe some capital improvement projects identified. So some completed steps in the process. The counties have formed the West Central Regional Water District via resolution. It's the first water district in the state of Minnesota since 1985, so we're really kind of reinventing the wheel and trying to work through a very antiquated statute with how today's regulatory environment is and how funding programs work. The petition was filed and accepted to initiate the district court proceedings. The appointment of the engineer for the project is completed. We've developed and submitted a preliminary engineering survey for the project and had our subsequent hearing on that preliminary engineering survey, which was actually right here in Clay County District Court. I think it was slotted for courtroom 4, but we might have ended up taking a couple others as well with the amount of folks that came to the hearing, which is very positive. Subsequent to that, the court had issued an order in the next step for kind of a detailed engineering survey. Outside of the court process, you'll see on the next slide, or a couple slides from now, I kind of have a map. We tried to really work out and identify, like, how does this process look? It's not linear. There's a lot of other things that aren't contemplated in the statute. And one of those is funding for the project. To date, we had secured $3.5 million in federal EPA grants. Part of that, which is going to be used for master planning and the Phase 1 design, as well as legal work. We've had 16 counties, cities, and agencies filed resolutions and letters of support. With recent outreach through some water provider meetings, we're expecting 4 or 5 additional from regional water providers within Minnesota. 60 plus public meetings. We've had over 450 plus rural testimonials from residents saying that they would like the opportunity to hook up to rural water. Within that, those rural testimonials, I'd kind of put an infographic together here on the right to try to identify, we have them identify, why do you want to hook up to rural water? What's your driving factor from being on your own well? And as you can see, the larger graphics are, the words that were used more, the smaller ones were in various other reasons why they would want it. But the big ones that we come up is hard water, concerned about reliability, odor, staining, well, which shows that most of these are rural residents, arsenic, and taste were large concerns among many other various ones that are on there. To date, too, we've had multiple funding awards and multiple pending applications. I'll kind of get into those a little bit more in this next slide. We've met with countless meetings with legislators, regulatory agencies, and I know Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Bear have also met, with respected legislators, expressing kind of the need for a project like this. Lucas's phone seems to ring more often than not anymore about the interest that's growing for this project. So, in previous years that we've been had a bonding bill drafted, and last year we did have about $4.5 million in bonding that was in the final, official, unofficial list that was out there that didn't make it across the finish line. So, hopeful something will get done this session or next session with that. Throughout this process, there's been quite a few other things that have come about that really fall outside of what was expected with kind of the engineering and thought process of how this project is growing and the ripple effect that it's had. You know, I had said we had $3.5 million in federal monies that was awarded. Right now, there's another pending $750,000 in federal grants that we're hoping makes it through to the final budget in March. $2.4 million has been secured locally by regional cities for infrastructure related to hooking up to this project when it comes. And that was through Minnesota Department of Economic Development. 6 cities in the district are applying for a combined $20 million for phase 1 funding for grants and loans for infrastructure build out. There's already been, you know, like I said, strong state level support, including kind of future financial pledges. And the project, you know, we're looking at it a lot of times from Minnesota and the 3-county perspective. But there's a lot going on the outside, the peripheries across the border. There's been quite a few discussions regarding, you know, how this project can help communities like Moorhead Public Service, or communities like Moorhead Public Service, and East Grand Forks with looking at a long-term water supply through the Red River Valley Water Supply Project, which is a 72-inch pipeline coming from the Missouri River east across North Dakota. And, you know, they're looking for all the support they can get to get that project done. It's under construction right now, and anticipated to be completed in 7-8 years. I'd kind of attached a letter as, you know, through our regional meetings, that project had kept coming up is that it's something that the district should look into, you know, long-term, as well as it could help all the communities up and down the region. So we had drafted up and submitted a letter of support for the project for Senator Klobuchar to work with Senator Hoeven to pass some NDOS funding, and it does sound like that letter had gone to where it needed to be. So, and support's expected. And you know, the other kind of cool part that's come about this district and the evolution of it is we're able to meet with all of these communities, all these touch points, all these municipalities. And as part of the preliminary engineering survey, we'd identified 11 different regional water providers that could maybe supply this system. With the 2 more, I think one maybe scheduled this week and 1 more we're trying to get done this month yet to get them all. But we've had strong backing from everyone across the board, both North Dakota and Minnesota, regional water suppliers, to the effect that some very large regional water providers that are, you know, right here near Clay County are actually launching studies that have studies on how they could provide water to the West Central Regional Water District and what that looks like long term. I actually just got a call from Hawley, I think it was middle of last week, asking, you know, if we would help them with their long-term water supply project and seeing how this could be helpful for both entities. So kind of a cool ripple effect that's happened from the outreach of this project so far. So kind of the next steps in the public process. We're going to submit the detailed engineering survey and viewer report to the court. From that, we'll hold the second public hearing on the detailed survey and issue the notices that are required. These hearing notices, that kind of wasn't contemplated originally. When we had done the first survey, we noticed every landowner within Zone 3, whether they're in the city limits or rural. Now this next hearing notice, we're anticipating noticing every landowner in the 3-county region that falls within the district, whether you live in the middle of a city or rurally as well. So it's about 15 or 16,000 notices that we expect to go out, you know, this spring or summer. So it's there'll be quite a bit of probably talk and maybe questions coming your way about that. Just a heads up. And then court approval and order for build out to the project. some of the things I wanted to get into quickly, as I know we're running a little bit late, but when we had first kind of looked at what does this look like? What does this project look like? What is required by statute? We had kind of looked at that zone 3, right? Those middle, first initial boundaries that were set. And we had mapped out, okay, these are the steps. We needed to establish our governance. We need to notice the project. We need to do a preliminary project hearing and a detailed project survey, noticing, and then project plan specifications. But what we'd kind of realized as we'd started working through the statute, as the scope had, kind of evolved is, the statute requires you to do a feasibility study of that zone, but it doesn't account for what's next. Like, what are you sizing that pipeline for after the first cities? Who are you building it out to? How is this going to be financed? How are rates going to be structured? How are board policies going to be adopted that support all of this? And, talking through all of this with the board and, some colleagues in Flaherty and Hood, we had really come out with, well, let's try to look at, we're doing the court survey, but how do we make this more of a court survey with a master plan aspect to look at anything we do here sets the district up for, financial success down the line and ability to expand, grow, do everything that we had promised it to do to residents and municipalities within the 3-county region. So with that, we had kind of broke it into, okay, we got the court process, we got the master plan that kind of ties into the court process, and we got the work plan with the EPA with secured dollars to how can we make this all mesh together and eventually get us to bidding a project. Before bidding a project, we want all these things in place. Don't want it to be the Wild West, because we've learned from the sins of our past in North Dakota and other regional places and how things were done when these were first incepted to how things are done now. So the remaining efforts that are part of the master plan / court survey that we're kind of in the midst of right now, we're looking at system participation, getting memorandums of inclusion from all the cities, who's in for planning planning amounts, how much water, where are you, when do you need it. Master plan, kind of we talked about where the infrastructure's at, what's needed, timing and phases. Board financial policies, how do we set rates? How do we set cost allocations so that each community, each resident feels like we have a fair rate structure to serve them? As well as, if the district's going to acquire these grants, what is the distribution of those grants and who receives benefits of these, and how is this done equitably? And then additional funding sources, what are the ways that we can fund, not only the first phase, but, future phases. And that can be done many ways: grants, bonds and loans, through your rate structure, and setting strategic reserves. So our project budget updates, initially we had that $300,000 budget that was proposed early on in 2022, 2023, to establish the district and obtain the judicial approval. Through that, significant process has been made. As discussed, our scope is expanded a little bit. We anticipate the efforts to be kind of a lot larger than we originally did. So kind of as of last week, actually, that initial budget is, officially exhausted. That was approved by the counties, and it was an up to amount budget. What we were anticipating is that initial budget would get us to our EPA funds, our grant funds that are available out there, that are allocated to the project. But through working out, we need to get the work plan approved by the EPA. It's been in their hands. They have to give us a grant agreement, and then an agreement between Norman County, Felton, and West Central Regional Water District on those funds needs to be done yet. So all those things are going to take a little bit of time, and we think we're looking at about 5 to 6 months or sometime this summer sometime this summer to where we can actually get to access those funds. Those funds actually are potentially reimbursable to the counties following funding that was committed. I believe March of '23 is where the reimbursement date may come in line where some of the costs that had previously been sunk could be reimbursable. So where we're at today is we're kind of requesting, and we're going to be talking to Polk, Norman, Clay, requesting, between 150,000, 200,000 total to use as stopgap funding needed to kind of avoid delays in this engineering and master plan project until additional funds are available. The consequences of delay are, obviously the risk of halting pretty much everything that we're doing. The momentum seems like it's been building and building and building to where we're taking pretty seriously now. And with regulatory agencies, funding agencies, and legislators, and increased future construction costs. Delaying this might delay another full construction season. So you're looking at a full another year where cities like Felton and Pearlie, they couldn't have this water to their doors soon enough. So kind of what we're recommending is that there be an approval of stopgap funding just to keep the project on track, which can be reimbursable under the EPA grant or through district revenue payback in the future as well. The statute does contemplate that if the counties are fronting money for it, once there is sufficient revenue, that the district can be paying the counties back through that. So this was discussed at the last West Central meeting. We had kind of looked at, okay, if we were to look at this stopgap funding through a $150,000 or $200,000 scenario and apportion it based off.
Clay and Norman backwards up there.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. So I'm used to saying them right north to south, right? So thank you for correcting me. So what we had discussed is, okay, what if we were to apportion some stopgap funding based on our previous formula, what would it look like, and what are some scenarios that we may be asking the counties for in the future? So today I kind of wanted to just, I know there won't be any action, maybe some discussion, but I wanted to let everyone know, this is something that the West Central Board had talked about. This is the scenarios that were proposed by kind of A2S and Flaherty and Hood of what we think it would take to get to that 6-month time frame, and get us to keep the ball and momentum rolling to try to get this thing through the court process this summer yet. And I definitely will be correcting those order of names. So lastly, what's next? We need to finalize our funding plan for the court process. We need to figure out, how we're going to finish it out, which will include finalizing our detailed engineering survey and master plan. That includes working with all our state, local, and federal regulatory agencies. The district's going to continue to apply for funding as it comes up. I think the round of earmarks, if earmarks are around, I would anticipate there'd be some applications again. This round. Finalized design bid project identified from the engineering survey. And once the court orders the build out, begin the project build out for a safe, sustainable, long-term water supply for residents of western Minnesota and beyond possibly. So we've been hearing a bit of interest from possibly residents and a little bit of counties around you. So it's been interesting to watch how this concept has evolved and grown a little bit further. So with that, I guess I'll ask if there's any questions from the commission. Lucas, if you have anything, or Commissioner Kamler, Commissioner Bear, if you have anything to add that I forgot about. So
Commissioner Bear.
I just thank you guys for coming in. I even learned some on how this all started because I was not on it there originally. So I thank you guys for coming in. And Felton has procured some money with a USDA grant. You're just waiting for that.
Yeah, they're working on a USDA grant. They've probably got some search grant monies as well. I don't know for sure. And they were one of the applicants for the, when we had done the original earmarks with the original boundary, Felton was one of the applicants and Norman County was one of the applicants. And Felton's was successful, so.
So we're waiting on those funds to come in the next 6 months to keep this project
Yep,
moving forward.
correct.
But thank you guys for,
Yeah, I'd say largely, you know, we've recognized all these other water systems that's added kind of to the initial budget process to cost, and then as well as, you know, some of the additional meetings and understanding with like the Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota DNR, you know, they want to know what we're doing and they need to sit down and talk with us, and so those kind of things have initially, I would guess that we were a little short on the estimate, and
Yeah.
not knowing how many of these meetings and how many of these presentations that Steve would have put together.
Yeah, that's one thing that it kind of wasn't anticipated or that we weren't looking at doing initially, is we're gonna actually be meeting with, for sure, every city in Zone 3, as well as the additional water providers, to present them the project again, what it all means, what a memorandum of inclusion looks like, you know, how much, when, all those kinds of things. And, you know, it's, I don't know, we've probably had already 40 plus 50, maybe other meetings with another 20, 30 anticipated just in the city work, so.
In our last meeting that we had in Halsted, the board did express some concerns about having this thing not moving anywhere for a while with the momentum that's been talked about. So I think it's important for us to take into an awful lot of considerations. And I know one of the things that isn't even talked about in this whole process is the economic developments that might happen as a result of these projects moving forward too. So, I think we've talked to, Steve Larson's been on these meetings, and, just going back to that last slide when you showed the stopgap numbers at 150 and at 200,000, one of the things that we also need to pay attention to is the number that was talked about to really get this thing through the second court proceeding. Is just about doubled that 200,000.
Yeah,
probably close to that 400,000. And I'm a little bit skeptical of where government is moving right now, both at the state and federal level. And to keep this thing moving, I think we're going to have those serious discussions. What happens if it does go beyond 6 months? We need to be prepared for what we're going to be willing to do to make sure this thing goes through. So we'll have those discussions. I know Steve's been working on, from Clay County's standpoint, where would Clay County's money come from? There's some ideas that we're floating around that we'll talk about next week. I think we'll have this on the agenda next week to talk about the funding gap. We don't need to dive too deep in that right now, but we will be doing that next week. And it's certainly our hope that we can come up with something real soon that will keep the momentum going. I just want to briefly mention that Commissioner Bear and I did meet both with the cities of Hawley and Barnesville last week, along with Lucas and Stephen. And the feedback we got is very positive in their involvement. Both of those entities would probably be looking at being a water supplier, of which we also need in this whole process. So there was really some really positive feedback that we got there. And for those of you who were able to be at the hearing, when I saw all these people coming to these hearings, we filled basically 2 courtrooms, and I'm thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a long day. And what it turned out is everybody that was there was supportive of the project. And it turned out to be a really good deal. So we need to keep this thing moving, and so we'll have that discussion next week. And I just real briefly, Lucas, can you talk about, obviously Clay County can't be the only one to do this. It's got to take all 3 counties to do it. And is there a timeline for the other counties that you know of where they're going to be talking about this?
We know Polk County was meeting today and was not on the agenda for the Polk County meeting. They're expecting kind of a memorandum of understanding on how the funding is going to be requested and if it's paid back or not, which you'll be.
Yeah, and because we all act at different times, everything's gonna probably have to be contingent on what the others decide, you know, but, so. I think we're kind of running right up against our time, so I want to thank you both for being here. Is there any questions that a board member has of these two? Because if so, I'd like to, you'd have that opportunity to ask them that. If there's not, then we'll probably get into some more deeply into this next week when we have it on the agenda. But thank you both for coming and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate your time.
We will take a 5-minute break before we do our We're back in session. Our next item is scheduled to be a closed session for attorney-client privilege pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 3B, union negotiations.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to go into closed session under the rules that were provided.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We're in closed session. We'll just give a minute for. We are now back in session. We were just in closed session for union negotiations, and coming out of that meeting, I think it would be appropriate for us to ask our Assistant County Administrator to follow up on some negotiations with sergeant pay and deputy first class pay as it relates to current MOUs. So we'd be looking probably for a modified MOU.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Ebinger.
I move that we direct HR to move forward with readdressing the current MOUs with sergeants and deputy first class salaries as discussed.
All right. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Darren.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move to our committee reports, and we're going to start with Ezra today. Commissioner Bear.
Last Tuesday, I went to the Planning Commission where we had a Fargo-Moorhead diversion update by Eric Dobbs from AE2S. And he informed the commission that about 61% of the diversion is complete. We also discussed the Southern Shore embankment on the Clay County side. Minnesota DNR came out with a recommendation that no development should be done on the dry side of the embankment on the first quarter mile from the toe of the embankment in case there's a breach in the embankment. After that update, there was a public hearing we had about the Clay County Development Code. We received chapters 5 through 8. We talked about changes that were made and added a few more changes. For almost the last 2 years, we've had public input at the Planning Commission on the Development Code changes. And staff is getting ready to hold their final public hearing to discuss the whole code update before it comes to this board for approval, and we have a work session on that matter later today. Then on Thursday, the 30th, Lucas Spaeth, Stephen Slick from AE2S, and Commissioner Campbell and myself represented the West Regional Water District at a meeting with the City of Barnesville with the City Administrator, Jeremy Cassette, to talk about the water project. We gave him an update on the project, and it sounds like he would give a letter of support to the project, and that long-term they would be interested in working with the water district. We're making it a point to go out and introduce ourselves to all the cities in Clay County that this water district could supply in the future. And then on Friday, we had the Clay County Intergovernmental Committee retreat, where we had great conversation about the opioid crisis and the PRTF and the legislation panel. That is all my committees.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Ebinger.
Thank you. Last Tuesday, we had a PIC meeting with discussion we had today in our earlier closed session involving sergeant and deputy first class pay. Wednesday, I had a meeting with County Administrator Larson and Commissioner Mojo. We had a discussion on some of the legislative issues involving the Diversion Authority funding. Following that, I attended the award ceremony at the Sheriff's Office and a swearing-in new deputy we have, Deputy Heidi. And just want to remark, and I know it's my old line of my occupation, line of work, but there's some fantastic work being done by our deputies. The life-saving and exemplary performance a lot of deputies were recognized for goes above and beyond. It shows real skill. It shows an ability to respond and take care of our people, particularly out in the rural parts of the county where they may be the first people to get there, and they've got a high degree of competence in addressing all sorts of issues once they're there. So I was real proud to see, and congratulations to the officers. I was proud to see that they're recognized for this kind of performance. Then Friday, I also attended the Clay County Intergovernmental Retreat. I was very impressed with our staff addressing the opioid crisis. Annabelle Default and Lieutenant Mike Detloff with the Moorhead Police Department really showed some expertise, and their colleague Cassie Kozowski with Beth's Place. We've got a great response we put together to address some of our issues with the opioid crisis. It's not going to go away, and we've got to have some response for it. And I'm quite impressed with what we're doing up to this point. Commissioner Mojo and Administrator Larson, Commissioner Campbell, and Steve Sumner from Solutions gave a great presentation on our PRTF efforts. We've got a lot of work put into it. I'm another reason to be proud that we're in Clay County. These are things that people around the state have talked about needing, and we're actually doing something about it. And I look forward to a legislature that gets back on the deal and helps us move forward with this great idea that we desperately need for our kids in this state. People in Minnesota don't realize it, but we are 50th in the country on what we provide for psychiatric care, critical psychiatric care for kids. And we're moving forward with something that's going to address that for the northwest part of the state, well, for the entire state. But there's nothing even close in our part of the state right now. Appreciate Senator Kupek, Representative Joy and Keeler, and a representative from Senator Smith's office that came and gave us an update on legislative issues. I'm sorry?
Senator Johnson.
Oh, don't want to forget Senator Johnson. They gave us a good update on where we're at and where we need to go, and hopefully we'll get the legislature moving here soon and get some of this work done. And then the presentation by Quinn Yeager and Chandler Esslinger on the homeless issue was very informative, and it's a current issue that dialogue needs to be shared on both sides of the river. Maybe we'll get there, but as we saw in what Mr. Yeager brought in, Jagger brought in earlier today that passed, there is efforts within our community, within Clay County and from the state to get some things done. And that completes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Krabanoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was gone last week on vacation, but I'll go back to my meetings beginning on January 22nd. On that date, along with Commissioner, Commissioner Mojo and Steve, our administrator, I too went to St. Paul advocating for the PRTF funding. We met with people, and members of the Senate and House members. I know it was talked about last week in last week's meeting, and we'll continue to advocate and push on. Thursday, the 23rd, Nat had two meetings with CAP-LP. We had our Finance Committee. It's important to note that CAP-LP right now is in very good standing. Cash flow looks good. And the reason I'm bringing it up is there's been some executive orders put out over the last week. We'll see how that all falls out on with the federal administration, and some of the funding, was paused shortly, but then came back on. But I just, for the purpose of CAP-LP locally, if there are little bumps along the way here, they're in good shape to continue. We had our Board of Directors meeting. After that finance meeting, we have a new board member, Jill Magnell. Jill operates a child care center in South Moorhead. We welcome her to the board. We had a communication and marketing spotlight, the work being done by CAP-LP locally on their communications outreach done by employee Bree Glenn. Then going further down, we approved a new Head Start director, Patty Lopez. She's been with our local CAP-LP for 20 years. The previous, that position was open because the previous director moved up into Director of Operations. Went through some MCAP, meaning Minnesota Community Action Partnership, legislative agendas that will be working with the legislature. And I think other than that, it was all reports that I'd really talk about. I will do a shout out for those of you that would like to help keep supporting CAP-LP and their services. In the local area, we will be part of Giving Hearts Day on February 13th. So consider your giving toward that. On yesterday, I had a couple meetings on February 3rd. The first was the Planning Commission and Board of Adjustments with the City of Moorhead. Two simple things. They had a request for vacation of a right-of-way that is part of the downtown Moorhead, and this area is where 4th Street, pretty much north of Center Avenue, that vacation. Just have that in place, so then as that parcel is being developed, it opens a path for that new developer or whatever the case, whoever they sell it to have not deal with that right-of-way that exists. Also, there were other text amendments that are being rewritten to bring them current with projected uses, also in the downtown area, which involves mixed-use districts, commercial districts, signs, and other zoning amendments. Both those items were approved. We were given our 2024 annual report. It's very long, but it was for information, and find it interesting. Also, with the Moorhead Center Mall redevelopment project, there had been an environmental assessment statement that was reviewed, and no defects were found with the questionnaire that was given, and it was accepted And they're about the only thing left to do on that environmentally as they're digging and working through that area. Archaeological searches will be done during the process of all the digging. And that concludes that. And then after that, I had the monthly meeting for the Clay County Early Childhood Initiative. There were 5 new members that came into the meeting last night. Their work in the child care area. They all interact. It's good networking to be part of those meetings. The Clay County ECI is setting up has set up, I should say, a early childhood fund. Their goal is to raise $40,000, and these would be for short-term grants, emergency needs for certain caregivers, whether centers or home units, to help them. Maybe they're in need of something small or needing a small grant for something that will help them in their providing services. Other than that, 2 things, just planning for events in the coming year. We have the Kids Fest coming up May 3rd at the library. That's always been a popular event. And then also preparing for the Longest Table event, which will be in September this year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Commissioner Mojo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week, I attended a discussion with the City of Moorhead and Clay County representatives on the resource recovery contract discussion. As you recall, we were provided notice in November from the city on their intent to vacate that agreement. Certainly from the county's perspective, we are trying to identify the most financially conservative approach to how our citizens pay for trash mitigation. And I think we maintain that this agreement, one, not only is the most streamlined for citizens to drop off at that site and the landfill, but really the most cost-effective way to do so. So we really see value in that continued partnership. The city does have some concerns raised. I think part of what happens, and we need to continue to educate as new folks come to leadership positions, is just to refresh on why we started journeys like this together, what the mutual understandings were, what the financial savings were, and what the promises in St. Paul were, as we were given $8 million to have that facility. So I think we'll continue to highlight those components, and the county maintains steadfast in the commitment to keep the cost for our citizens as low as possible, and those costs as low as possible to not only Clay County greater, but also the city of Moorhead and the cities in which we help serve that. So I think it was a big first step meeting. I think there's a lot that we need to work through, but I'm hopeful. The next day I attended a meeting, the Prairie Lakes Solid Waste Authority meeting in Perham, or Municipal Solid Waste Authority in Perham. There was election of officers. Our own Commissioner Campbell is now serving as the vice chair of that board, with Bill Stearns serving as chair. Talked about the meeting schedule, committee assignments, and the member contact components. I'll save the financial report for Commissioner Campbell, but overall, in regards to the performance and what materials are coming in there, we just are really in great financial standing. We're in great material standing. As we talk about, the ash management and the mitigation of that ash, there was a grant award and MnDOT correspondence regarding that. That ash can really be utilized in a number of road projects statewide. We've talked about how that is an asset that we can market. And while there is a stockpile at the Ottertail facility, I believe, that still isn't an enormous amount of ash, meaning a single or 2 projects could really exhaust all of the stockpiled ash. So just talking about what that asset looks like. There was a facility tour for the new board members. Commissioner Hansen from Becker County and Commissioner Sullivan from Otter Tail County were going to be part of that. We talked about the Tuffy's 2025 steam sales rate letter in that meeting, and talked about a potential for a demo landfill plant granting opportunity, and I believe that was MPCA that presented on that. That afternoon, I attended the NACO First 100 Days meeting that NACO put on virtually, really to update entities and folks on what the executive orders mean and how we can utilize those and plan for those and communicate with staff on those. Even now, a lot has changed since that meeting, so I appreciate NACO and AMC for really keeping all of us up to date on what's going on. I also attended the meeting that Commissioner Ebinger referred to in regards to legislative strategizing for the the Diversion Authority financial ask in St. Paul. The next day, I attended a Metro Transit Development Plan Study Review Committee. I really appreciate the opportunity, both Administrator Larson and I sat through that. Appreciate the opportunity to sit through that. I really felt I was a little out of my lane per se because they are so planning driven, but felt it was a really great opportunity in regards to talking scenarios on bus plans to insert Clay County's desire and hope that our facilities will continue to all be serviced on a bus line, not only now, but in the future, even if it's a on-demand type service. You know, it's tricky and that service is expensive, but I appreciate having the opportunity to attend that and share that perspective. Friday, I attended the intergovernmental retreat with all of you. I really appreciate the Joint Powers Group for putting that on. Thanks to staff. It was a really great opportunity to meet with so many different folks. I appreciate the panels. They were very thought-provoking, and also the opportunity to share our PRTF story with so many people in the room who have supported that initiative and also see the value in that need. And also thanks to our state legislative reps for being there. I think that's a really important opportunity to share and hear from them. Yesterday, I attended the AMC Board of Directors onboarding meeting. Really self-explanatory, talked about the history of the AMC group that's been in existence since 1904, I believe. And then later attended the MRC Board of Directors meeting after that. Had a discussion with Senate GOP leader Mark Johnson, who did really give us quite the lay of the landscape in St. Paul, which I think is frustrating for all of us in greater Minnesota. But, you know, I know we talk bonding asks, but I think really right now we need to push to get a budget. I mean, we're at the point where we're getting so delayed, we're missing important targets in the budget piece, and given Governor Walz's budget, there were some pretty big cost shifts to counties, hundreds of millions of dollars to counties, and so while we will continue to tell the story at the Capitol about these legislative bonding asks, we need to talk about passing a budget and how important that is to greater Minnesota. And so just had a pretty good strategizing session with the MRC legislative lobbying team. And after that, I attended the MetroCog Executive Committee meeting. We talked about the MTP update, the indirect rate that we've talked about not covering 100% what the work entails. There might be some nominal losses, but those nominal losses can add up through the agency. So talking about how we tell that story at the Capitol, not only in Bismarck, but St. Paul, and then had agency updates from the director. And besides that, I'm not sure how much you want me to update you on the legislative contacts that I have throughout the week, but really great feedback still with Representative Keeler and Representative Joy. Monday, I'm facilitating visits with Diversion Authority representatives to those leaders in St. Paul. I've maintained a lot about how important it is for those reps to also be part of the legislative ask. So I'll be going Sunday to St. Paul, and then we'll have a full in-depth slate of meetings on Monday to update there. And then also the Buffalo Red Watershed District has maintained that they want to have a presentation at their board meeting on Monday, and we'll be asking that board for a letter of support. So Steve, I'll just need to talk with you after about who will present that and provide that. But onward, I guess. That concludes my reports.
Thank you. All right, on Tuesday, the 28th, we did have our Personnel Issues Committee meeting. We had 2 items on there. One was what we talked about today with the sergeant's pay and for deputy first class pay. We also had another issue that was presented to us regarding a vacation schedule, a difference or some, how it's done in the UKG, which is the software, is that right? And the personnel policy, and we just determined that that's something that administratively can be fixed without action of this board. So that was that. And I do want to also follow up that same day. We did have that joint meeting with Moorhead regarding the resource recovery letter that they had submitted to us to try to go over some issues there. And I think Commissioner Mose was right when she said that, you know, I think there needs to be a constant discussion with government entities when you have contracts, so that there's a clear understanding of why things were done when they were done. You know, in this particular case, you know, Moorhead came back and they felt maybe that they maybe shouldn't be handling a certain amount of garbage because it comes from rural areas. But you know, I think you need to be able to look at what the whole picture was and the whole contract was. And there was an awful lot of concessions that were made on behalf of the county too, in the whole financial process of that. And I do agree that what we had, I think, was a really good contract and a fair contract. And, you know, we'll see where it goes. I mean, we had that discussion yesterday, and I think I think we still would prefer to see that partnership continue as opposed to going a different route. I think some folks might be less happy if we start having to look at alternatives. So we'll continue that dialogue. I know that Corey, our solid waste director, is going to put together some more fine details on that whole deal there, so we get a true picture. Then on the let's see, on the 30th, I attended the going back to the 29th, I attended Prairie Lake Solid Waste meeting. Commissioner Mojo gave a really good report on that, detailed report on that. We did establish our calendar for the year. And in terms of the finances, I just want to say that we ended up, you know, with a cash balance fairly similar to what we had the previous year, when you consider that we had increased our internal service fund by another $250,000, which is now up to $1.3 million. It wasn't too long ago when there wasn't a nickel in that. And so we've really made some good progress on that. And even with that, they were able to do about $300,000 or $400,000 worth of capital expenditures that they took out of the annual budget as opposed to taking it out of internal service fund. So overall, I really want to give credit to Brian over there, the plant manager, and Chris McCon, who acts as our executive director of the Prairie Lakes. I think they really do a good job in keeping that facility it wasn't too many years ago when we were having to ask for cash calls from each member county, and that's never any fun. So then on the 30th, then I met with Commissioner Bear, and I met in Barnesville regarding the West Central Regional Water Project. Commissioner Bear gave a good report on that. I just want to state again that, when we go and we sit down and we further give them information on what this whole project is, because it still is, there's a lot of questions and a lot of people don't really know the details on it. And, we spent some time talking about that, and there was really some, positive, thoughts on the part of how these cities, there's some small cities are gonna not be able to act as a supplier, but certainly some of our larger ones have that ability. So overall, a good meeting. And then Friday, we had the intergovernmental retreat. I just gonna echo what everybody else said about the day and everybody who participated. I think it was very well done. I just want to give a special thank you to Jackie and Sarah. I think this was my 33rd intergovernmental retreat. And I think of all the retreats, this is the first time where we didn't have technical issues, glitches, or anything like that. It just went smooth. And it went smooth because of those two. And I just really want to thank them for that. So you beat out the other 32.
Yes.
They have computers 33 years ago.
Oh, okay.
What were you, 6?
Well, I do recall there were some after parties where some people were smoking cigars in their rooms. We won't get into that. But yeah. But anyway, thank you very much for that. And that concludes my report. Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, I participated in the PIC meeting that is been well covered, and also the Resource Recovery Cooperative Service Agreement with the City of Moorhead. On the 29th, I met with Commissioner Mojo and Commissioner Aberger in regards to the legislative flood funding. Also participated then in the Sheriff's Award ceremony and the swearing in. Again, I think it's one thing to hear about it or even see some of the news stories. It's another thing to see the families that came to I guess, thank the officers again for the life-saving awards that were provided. So it was very neat. On the 30th, participated in MetroCog meeting that Commissioner Mojo addressed again. The real push for us is making sure that our facilities are continued to be used. They provided us with 2 scenarios to which they're looking and proposing changes, and so there'll be more to come on that. On the 31st, participated in the intergovernmental retreat. Again, I just would note that in addition to things running smoothly, it was very well received. We had over 70 registered and walk-up attendees, which is the largest that we've had in several years. And again, just to reiterate the thanks that Commissioner Campbell put out. Our staff did an amazing job, and Sarah specifically. Last year was Clay County's year to host the intergovernmental group, and so being up early, having agendas out, just really great work. So I appreciate that. Yesterday, I spent much of the day working on the MMB documentation for our PRTF. As this board knows, we submitted MMB documentation previously for a PRTF, but with the change in the request, with now being focused on non-secure juvenile facility, we had to submit that, and so that was submitted both to the House and the Senate. We have a work session scheduled this afternoon from 1 to 2:30, and also just for the board's awareness, starting next week through the end of April, we're going to be starting our department updates from each of our departments throughout the county. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Brian? Nothing? Jackie? Darren?
Most of the things that have already been discussed, I attended as well, the PIC committee, the resource recovery contract. I did attend the Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission meetings on Tuesday. I'll sit back here. And I had a meeting with Josh Hagum on Wednesday and had our Pro Talent UKG meeting on Thursday, and then went to Walt Disney World on the weekend. So if I can go into that if you want me to, but we're already over time, so I'll save that.
You didn't fall off any rides or anything, did you?
Close, but no.
All right, we will be adjourned.